Delighted to say that Asmir Begovic is making his World Cup show debut, everybody. All right. Absolutely right. Pleasure to have you here, Asmir. Before we get into previewing the big game, we've got to talk to you about the World Cup, obviously. What an experience it must have been for you. Bittersweet now, looking back on it?
Very much bittersweet. Obviously, it was very disappointing and heartbreaking to go out with a tournament. We were expecting to try and get into the round of 16 and obviously get out of our group, but it wasn't meant to be. But I'm determined to look on the positive side of things and make sure that we learn from our experience and become a better team. And just like I said, make the most of the whole experience.
Tell me you're getting a holiday.
I'm going to get a holiday. I'm going to go away in a few days. I've got a bit of extended time off, so I don't have to report back a little bit later than the other guys. So I'm going to get some sun, recharge the batteries, and get ready for another big season. One
thing I wanted to ask you about before we look at the big game is Krul's behaviour in the penalty shootout, from keeper to keeper. Did you think that was fair game, the way he was, I think it's fair to say, intimidating some of the Costa Rican players?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has their different styles. I mean, it's not something that I would do myself personally. I just like to try and save it and do my homework and things like that and get on with the game. Obviously, he was trying to get into the heads of the Costa Rican players, and I guess it worked. There's no rules saying that he can't do it, and he made the most of that situation, and obviously worked out for him.
Below the belt, though, would you say?
Well, some would say that. Like I said, it's not against the rules, so it's difficult to argue against it. But from my point of view, not something I would do. But I can't say I agree with it. But like I said, he did it and worked, and nothing else you can say about it.
Okay, we'll move on. 5 keys to the game that you've picked out for Brazil versus Germany. Starting fairly obviously with the Neymar effect.
That's it. I mean, I think that's obviously the big talking point at the moment. You look at Neymar and what he's meant to the Brazilian team. He's been a key player for many years and carried that team, top goal scorer. So obviously he's going to be a big miss for them. And it's interesting to see how the Brazilian team responds. Is it going to be something that is going to drop their spirits and really make them underperform, or is it something that's going to pick them up and kind of look at the positive side of things and make them rally around each other and obviously win the tournament for him maybe? So it could work both ways, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
That's what Schweinsteiger said. We've got to be really wary of this team now because they're grouped together and rally around.
Well, exactly. Obviously, it seems like they're all trying to rally around each other, like I said, and be positive and kind of win the tournament for Neymar and use it as an incentive. But it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, it's easier said than done. It's something they can do positively. I think the crowd are going to get behind them as well and make sure they give them an extra lift. So I think they're going to try and use it in a positive way. But no matter what, Neymar is such an unbelievably gifted player that he's going to be a big miss no matter what.
Now, there are a lot of different ways, or a number of different ways that they can replace him. I guess you could break that down into a defensive approach to it and playing Gustavo with Fernandinho and Paulinho. Alternatively, you could bring Willian or even Bernard in, put Oscar into Neymar's role. What do you think Scolari's going to do?
Well, it's been an interesting thing. Obviously, I've seen reports that suggest that Willian is going to get into the side. Obviously, he's picked up a knock as well, so that's going to be interesting to see if he's going to be fit. But, that's a difficult choice Scolari has to make. Obviously, I know in the game previous in the tournament against Cameroon, when Hulk was missing, he put Ramirez in and really solidified the midfield and went with the 3 inside there. That game again ended up 0-0, so it was that was a choice he made then. Obviously, now it's a bigger game and maybe one he has to go for a little bit more, so it'd be interesting to see. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Ramirez come into the middle just to shore up the midfield and make sure they don't lose the midfield battle, because that's going to be an important part of the game.
Some reports come out of Brazil that Neymar's dad suggests that Neymar might be fit for the World Cup final, which is absolutely surreal. It went really well for Brazil last time they played their superstar in a World Cup final when he wasn't very fit. So I'm assuming that won't happen. We also know Thiago Silva's going to be out for the semi-final. That's strange, isn't it? Because it's gone under the radar a little bit, Silva's absence, but it's equally as big an admission from the team as Neymar, isn't it?
Well, it's definitely a double blow. Obviously, losing your captain is a big deal. Obviously, they have probably good replacements. I would imagine Dante will come in for him, who's been playing at Bayern Munich the last couple of years and performed at a very high level. So I don't think it'll be too much of a problem coming in. But obviously, I think in terms of a leadership point, what Thiago Silva brings to that team is very important. And maybe, arguably, it'll even bigger loss than Neymar, because, from that spirit-wise, from the leader-wise, and make sure he leads from the back and commands his players, he could be a big loss for them also.
Now, you've picked out the resilience of the German team. How are Brazil going to break that down, do you think?
Well, that's going to be interesting to see. I really find it difficult to see too many goals in this game, because I think both teams are going to be very well organized and drilled in. But Brazil have been looking very dangerous from set plays. Obviously, they got 2 or 3 very attacking, aggressive players, and David Luiz. Dante will come in. He's got a very big aerial threat. Fred's very dangerous set plays. So that's going to be maybe a key for them, where they can see some goals coming. And, without Neymar, I find it difficult to see where they're going to get the breakthrough from. Where is the creativity going to come from? the last ball, the assist for the striker. So I think it's an interesting one, and it's one they're going to have to be on top of the game to beat Germany. And I think they're going to make sure the energy levels are high. The game is played at a high tempo, and maybe they can break Germany down. But I think it's going to be very difficult no matter what.
This could be the game that Fred goes big, right? I mean,
Well,
he needs it.
Well, he needs it. He needs to come alive. Obviously, I think that'll be great for Brazil if he does. But he has to lead by example. Obviously, he's got to be a physical presence at the front of the team, make sure he holds the ball and brings people into play. Obviously, with Neymar, this is a guy who can, any given time, win a game for you, whereas they don't have that now at the moment. So they're going to collectively have to play really strong together and make sure they move the ball very quickly and get it forward as soon as possible also.
You've picked out the two managers as a head-to-head battle. They're quite contrasting characters, aren't they?
Well, that's it. Obviously, Scolari is very animated, very passionate about what he does, and then he shows it. But he's also very tactically astute as well. So he's very smart about what he does, and that's why I find it interesting to see what he does and how he replaces Neymar. Because, like you said, he can go with Willian up front, add a bit more attacking threat. Maybe that sacrifice the defensive side of the game a little bit, or he can bring in a Ramirez to play next to Luis Gustavo, who'll be back after suspension, next to Paulinho, really solidify that midfield and make it a tight game. So that's going to be interesting for Scolari, and I think for Löw as well. I mean, he's never been afraid to make changes to suit his opponents, so he might bring in Götze again, put Müller up front, and really go for some pace around the back line, or he can play with close in, use a target man. So there's a few different things that both managers can do, and it'll be an interesting battle between them.
Yeah, that's interesting. He started with closer against France, unlike the rest of the games in the tournament. Do you think he'll do that again?
It's interesting. Obviously, he worked against France. It's 1-0, so it's tough to change a winning team, but I think his more settled team has been with Müller as a kind of a false nine and really working the centre half from there. And then Götze will come in to maybe provide a little bit of forward play and forward thinking, creativity as well. But he's also got Schürrle, who he can bring in. He's a very talented player who does both sides of the game very well. He's never afraid to go back and track back players, especially with Marcelo bombing down the left wing. So he might come in. So it's interesting to see. There's a lot of different things. I don't think the teams are set in stone. So it could be very interesting to see what the managers do.
Now, the final point you've picked out, the crowd factor. You referenced it earlier, being out there and seeing it firsthand. Explain to us what the feeling is like amongst the Brazilian people that you encountered.
Well, there's huge joy around the country. There's a huge buzz around all of Brazil, and I think that's obviously helped Brazil go a long way. I mean, it's literally is the 12th man, so they're obviously going to have the crowd factor behind them.
Because we're hearing that there's too much pressure. I mean, is that a redundant argument? The sense that the sense of expectation amongst the Brazilian people is having a negative effect on the team?
Well, not from what I've seen. Obviously, I think the team have performed pretty well. It's difficult, obviously, playing your own country. Sometimes the pressure can get to you, but I think the overwhelming bit for them is the support from the crowd. I think that's helped them play to a high level, especially against Colombia. You saw how fast they played, the energy they played with. It seems like they were never tiring, and the crowd helps you get through those kind of moments. And I think being a semi-final of the World Cup, the level of support is going to go up even more. So I think that's going to be a huge factor for them. That's going to be one that Germany are going to have to deal with. Obviously, I know Germany have very experienced players. I'm sure they're used to playing these kind of environments, but in general, the crowd can be a big factor for Brazil, and I think it'll obviously suit them more than Germany.
I'm afraid that is all we have time for. Give it up for Asmir Begovic, everybody.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Excellent work, my friend. Sorry we've run out of time, but before you go, give us a quick prediction for the big game.
Going to go for something controversial. Going to go Germany 2-1 in extra time.
That is controversial. Do you agree with him? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget, if you haven't already, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Why? Well, there's lots more good content coming your way for the rest of the World Cup. We'll see you soon.